Hi everyone. So till yesterday, we were talking about variables, class variables, local variables, instance variables, and methods, how to declare a method and how to declare a class, and in method where how to write a logic, everything we have written. So we know the basic structure of Apex class. Now today's class is a step back. When I say step back, so when we were working in the Visualforce page, right? In the Visualforce page, how did we work on? Like if I have to pull the account details, I used to have in the Visualforce page standard controller. So that today's focus is how can we merge or how can we call a Apex class from Visualforce. Based on the Visualforce Apex class that we have written last time, we will take the same example of the Apex class and we will call into the Visualforce page. Now, so basically Apex module, right now we all know that Apex module contains or controls the data. Controls the data and logic. And using the Visualforce page, we are going to call this Apex module, right? So in the Visualforce page, there are three controllers. There are three types of controllers. In Visualforce page, there are three types of controllers. One is standard controller, and we all know how to use a standard controller. Second one is custom controller. Custom controller. And the third one is extension controller. Extension controller. So we have seen a couple of examples using the standard controllers. Now we are going to see a custom controller. If time permits, we'll see the extension controller. Otherwise, we'll see tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement a simple basic Visualforce page. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement the Visualforce page. We all know how to implement the Visualforce page. So in order to implement the Visualforce page, so what I need here?
File new Visualforce page.
And then I'll say VF underscore 0209. Let's say this is greater of 3 numbers. Okay. So what am I going to implement in the Visualforce page? Let me give you the overview. I'm going to implement a Visualforce page. Inside the Visualforce page, I'll have a section. Okay. And where the details are first number, and second number, and let's say result. Okay, this is how I'm going to implement it. And here we'll have the text box. So this is what I'm going to implement it. Now tell me what all I need to do, take it here. In order to implement that kind of a structure in the Visualforce page, what all the tags do I need to take it?
Apex pageBlock.
Apex pageBlock.
and inside that apex page block section.
Apex page block session.
But it will all come under form, am I right?
Yes. Why it will come under the form?
Without that, you cannot have. That is the starting point.
No, basically here the point is we are going to expect some input from the client. So whenever we are going to expect some input from the client, then we need to have a apex form because we are going to use the input field. Right. So page block title equal to calculation. And let's give the title here as well. Calculate greater or smaller number, greater or smaller number. Okay. Now inside this, what is the next one that I need to take it?
Input field.
Input field.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do we need an input field here?
Because we are providing the input for the first number and second number.
Okay, but this is the custom. This is the custom one. First number I do not have inside the Salesforce.
So input label.
By input label, I'm not asking the label name to enter, but I'm not asking the user to enter the label name.
So output label then. So it's just display.
Yeah, output label. Value equal to, I'll say enter the first number. Okay. Now after that,
Input text.
input
The text box.
apex colon input text. Okay. Perfect. So I need to repeat this for the second number as well as the second number, right? So instead of having it here, what I'll do is I'll use the apex page block section item. Control A, Shift Tab. Now I need this for second number. So this is enter the second number. Now same thing I need it for, let's say, let's give third number also. Let's compare top three, right? Third number. Now I have a first number, last number, and second number and third number. Now let's go ahead and implement some buttons in order to identify the greater number and smaller number. So what I'll use is okay, so I have a first number, third number, and then also I'm going to use the result. Result is the output field. So I do not need an input text here. I need it output text. And the label name is result. Perfect. Now here I'm going to add a radio button. Apex colon. How to add a radio button?
A page block button inside that.
In order to add the radio button, what the tag that I need to use it?
Command button.
radio button. In order to add the radio option, which tag do I need to use? So let's assume that I have here, okay, 2 radio buttons are there to identify the greater and smaller. Here is the greater and this is the smaller. And then I have a button at the bottom. Let's say this button name is calculate. Okay. As soon as the user enter the number here, 20 and 10 and then 30. If user enter this, as soon as they select the smaller, right? And they will enter the calculate. So as soon as they enter the calculate, the result has to be shown the smallest one. So the result is here. This is the third number. So result will be
Select radio and then command button.
sorry.
Select radio. Is that?
Select radio. Yeah. Apex colon. Select radio. So which we are going to use the radio option, and let's give the label for this. Select to calculate. Okay. Now inside this, in order to show the options, I'll use this.
Select option.
Yeah.
Select option.
Select options. So inside the select options, I'll just say that item label equal to greater, and the value will be. So once a user selected, at the backend, the value is going to capture. Now, and end here instead of the end tag. Now we need it for smaller. Smaller item value is S. Perfect. Now next thing, we need to add a button. For button, what I need to use it?
Command button.
Command button.
Command button, and the title is yeah, title equal to calculate. Now let's go ahead and see the output. Perfect. Now, in order to remove the header and sidebar, what do I need to do?
Sidebar
So
equal
that's
to
false.
false.
Sidebar equal to false, and then
Show header equal to false.
show header equal to false. Now, one thing, if you observe, here the button is not coming, value is not coming. Why?
We have not specified the name.
Mm.
Label. I think it should be label.
It should be value. If you give the value and let's save it, calculate. So in case if you say here title, the name will not come. If you say value, it is going to come. So this is everything R&D. Let me put a breakpoint here after the, so that it will be perfect. Okay. Now enter first name, second name, third number.
But when you click on calculate, does it do right now? Because there's no colon, am I right? You start with, for any action, you start with before the calculate, you see, because I remember there was You said that you have to have a dollar sign before it to perform an action. Am I right on a button?
Action. Okay. So for the action, okay. So here we have not written any action. Okay. So what it will do, if I enter first number, second number, and third number, if I select the smaller and let's click on the calculate, it doesn't do anything because there is no logic has written there. Okay, no logic. What to do on clicking on this button? The logic is not yet written. I have just implemented the UI right now. I have just implemented the UI. So let me bring the second number also here. So instead of the breakpoint, what I'll do is I'll go to the page block section. Then I'll say that column equal to 1. Let's say everything should come in 1. Right. Okay. So now it looks fine. Now what is going to happen? We have implemented the page. There is nothing has done. We just implemented the page. So that page is this one. This page we have implemented. This is the page which we have implemented. Now, whenever user enters something here, whenever user enters some number, assume that user is entering the here 77 and 50 and here the number is 40. Now I have selected this. I have selected the smaller or greater, whatever the number. Now what will happen if I select this and then I click on the calculate button? Basically this data, whatever is user entering the data, it has to store somewhere. In order to identify, even for the business logic, right now these values are on the fly. I'm not storing it anywhere. There is a text box. That's the reason I'm able to enter the text. But whatever the user enter here, the information, there should be some place where we need to store it. Could be a variable, could be a temporary box, or could be a permanent box, something box which we need to store whatever the data that is entered in the text box, we need to store it into the some variable. So for that, what we are going to do it further is we are going to implement a class. We are going to implement a class. So in this class, I'm going to have 2 or 3 variables because we have a first number, second number, and third number. So I'm going to have a num1, num2, num3. So these are the 3 variables, and then we need a one more variable for the result. One more variable for the result. Now, whatever the user is entering here, I need to set these values. I need to set these values to the num1, and I need to set the second number to num2, and I need to set the whatever the third number is there, I need to set it into the num3. So what is this called? Basically, in order to set this, we use here set. We use here set. In order to set the information, we are going to use the set. So that means num open close curly braces, open close curly braces, then I'll say here set, and even for num2, right? And now for the num3 also I need set. How about result? Result I'm not setting it. Result, I'm not setting anything because result is just an output. Result is just an output. The purpose of these three variables are what are the user is entering it. I wanted to send it to class. I want to send the values back to the class and set these values equal to 70. That means here num1 equal to 70, num2 equal to 50, and num3 equal to 40. I need to set those values here. If in case here user is changing to 30, immediately here it should be applied to 30. So I'm setting the values. Now, once I set the values, we'll do some business logic here. We will have a method inside the class. Assume that this method name is M1 or calculate method. Okay. M1 is the method. We'll do some logic. We'll do identifying the greater, high, smaller number. We'll do some logic. Then once we have the final execution is done, then we are going to store the final output into the result. We are going to store the final output into the result. Could be if I say smaller, then it is going to identify the smaller number equal to 40. So it will assign a 40 to the result. Once assign the 40 to result, now I wanted to retrieve this information into the Visualforce page. Retrieve the information into the Visualforce page. So in order to retrieve this, information, basically I need to show this information here. What is the value that I need to show? I need to show here 40 once I retrieve the information. But how can I retrieve it? In order to retrieve it, I say here for the result, I say get. Set the values to the class, get me the values from the class. So how the connection is happening here, we have a class and this side we have a Visualforce page. Let's say VF and this is a VF. So from VF, we are going to send back to the values, which is a set. Send back to the values, which is a set. And also, we are going to retrieve the information from the class. We are going to retrieve the information from the class, which is a get. So set get is always happens. If I'm calling the Apex class, then it should happen. Now here is the thing, I have went much ahead further saying that I'm going to set the values here. But the point here is how can I enable between these two classes? How can I connect it? First, I need to enable the connection between these two. First, I need to enable the connection between these two. How can I enable? Then only I can able to complete what are the logic that I said, which can be completed, which will be completed once I enable the connection. Otherwise, this will not be done. So the first point is how to connect Visualforce page and class. In order to connect the Visualforce page and class, we have to use custom controller on the Visualforce page. When I say custom controller equal to, I'll say the class name. I'll say here the class name. So when I say controller equal to class name inside the Visualforce page, that's how the connection happens. That means as soon as I say custom controller keyword, this is a predefined keyword. Custom controller is a predefined type or predefined variable, I can say predefined variable, which is given by the Salesforce. So as soon as I use custom controller equal to some class name, so automatically at the backend what will happen, Salesforce is going to understand When I say custom controller, Salesforce will understand, okay, they are going to call some business logic here. So I need to jump to the class name. So what is the class name? Then it will go and find out in the database, what is the class name. So it will try to find out where is the class name key. Out of the 100 class names, it is going to find out the exact file name. Maybe they are doing the SOCL or something, they are doing the search kind of a thing. So based on that search condition, it will identify, okay, this is the class. Now enable the connection between the Visualforce page and class. Now that's how the connection enabled, and then whatever happens within the Visualforce pages, it is going to send the data to the class, and it is going to retrieve the data from the class. Now in the real time, what we use, instead of only set and wherever it is needed set, wherever it is needed get, instead of that, in the real time, what we do is we use together. Instead of just saying a set, we use set and get. When we declare it, we say set and get. Num2 set get. Num3 set get. And the result set get. Why we use it? For now, it is not required. For now, whatever you are doing, the smaller program, it is not required. It is only for the set. Num1, num2, num3 is only for set, and result is only for get. That is fine. But further, if somebody is going to extend this Visualforce page, or they are going to improve the Visualforce page, so that's the reason on the initial stage itself, they will say what are the variables are declared in the Apex class, which is related to the Visualforce page. They always say get, set, get together, because probably I might needed those values further, or probably here I'm going to get the another information. Probably I need to set the result back, or I need to get the information of num1, num2, num3. And then maybe I need to do some logic here. So that's the reason we always say set get together. Okay. Now let's go ahead and implement the Apex class. Now this is the Visualforce page is done. Now let's go back to the developer. Okay. In the developer console, let's go ahead and implement Apex class. CL underscore 0209 VF greater or smaller 3 numbers. Let's copy this. I need this. Save. Okay. Okay. Now, so I have to declare num1, num2, num3 result. Num1, num2, num3, then I need result, right? So in order to declare set and get, I'm going to use the curly braces set and the get. Here also set and get, set, get. Even for result also, I'm going to use the same thing, set and the get. Now I need to give a data type for this. What is the data type for this? Integer, right? So I'll use same thing for others. Okay, now if I do not give the access modifier, then what is the default? It is going to take it?
Public.
Private. It is going to take the private.
The private, sorry.
Yeah. So by default, it is going to be the private. So that's the reason I'm going to, right now we are going to call it from the Visualforce page. So we need to have a public because these are the values that are used in the Visualforce page to store the input data. Now let's save this. Now I have variable declaration is done. Now I'm going to implement a main method. Public void main calculation. So now what is my main calculation here? I need to identify greater and smaller. I need to identify greater and smaller. So for that, what I'll do is I'll create a separate methods. Greater. So when I say void method name, what is that means? Is it a public or private? When I say void method name, is it a public or
Private.
private?
Public one.
Why it is public? Void, when I do not mention anything, by default, Salesforce is going to think it is a private. It is a private. Let me show one example. Let me open any existing. Let's take this calculation. Okay. Now I'm going to call this class from here. Okay. I'll say test1 equal to new class name. Okay, I did an initialization. Test1 dot. Will I be able to call this main calculation?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's save it. Okay, let's save this. Now, will I be able to call the greater?
No. Because it is private.
It shows here greater, but do not get confused. What is happening? It was showing me the greater, right? When I said test1, when I said test1, it is showing all the methods, but do not believe here. It shows all the methods, but when you try to implement it, it says that it says that method is not visible. That means there is a method, but it is not visible to this class. There is a method, but it is not visible to this class. Even same for Visualforce also, we cannot call private method. So by default, it is going to be the private. Default, it is going to be the private. By default, it is going to be the private, right? Now I'm going to implement the logic differently for the greater and smaller. If num1 greater than, if it is num1 greater than num2, and if it is num1 greater than num3. Then I'll say result equal to num1. Now next we have else if num2 greater than num3 and num2 greater than num1. We can say result equal to num2. Result equal to num2. Then finally, I'll simply say else because it is the last condition. Else result equal to num3, else result equal to num3. Now same calculation, but what we need is smaller. We need to identify the smaller number. In order to identify the smaller number, we just need to change this condition. Right. Now we have two methods which are implemented to identify the greater and smaller. To identify the greater or smaller. Now here I need to call this. I need to call greater and smaller. Will I be able to call it in the same class?
Yes.
If it is a private, we could able to call from the same class. Okay. Now we have greater and smaller is there. Greater and smaller is there. But together I cannot execute two, because together I do not want the two result at a time. Right? Together I do not want two results at a time. If I say this, what will happen? The cursor first it will go to the greater method. Then it will execute it one by one, and the result will be set it as whatever the greater number is there. Then cursor will back to the smaller, and once it sees the smaller method, it will go to the smaller, and the cursor will execute in the smaller method. What are the smallest is there, it will store the result. So it is overwriting the greater number. Right? I do not want it to execute together. Now, when I wanted to execute it, what is the logic when I wanted to execute it? When I select the radio option, based on the radio option, it should execute the method. If I select a smaller method should execute. If I select a greater method should execute, right? If none of them are not selected, there should be a by default one value should come. Now, how will I know that what is the user is selecting here? What is the user is selecting here? What is the value user is selecting it? Does he selecting the greater or does he selecting the smaller? So how do I know that? In order to know that what I have to implement. In order to know what is the user has selected here, smaller radio option, greater radio option, what needs to be implemented in the class?
Choice.
Why we need choice?
Because he has to go for whether he is going for greater or smaller, like either greater or smaller.
Some variable we need it. We need another variable. We need another variable. Could be a selected option. Let's take as a selected option. Okay. So I need another variable which is called as a selected option. Why I need another variable? And this has to be have set get. I need another variable which is holding the set and get. Why do I need this another variable? To hold whatever the option is that is selected by user. Whatever the option is selected here, I wanted to store it into the selected option. I wanted to store it into the selected option. So here, this is going to be the set. Whatever is user is selecting the option here, I need to store that option into the selected option variable. So let's go ahead and use another variable here, public. What is the option here? What is the data type here?
Boolean.
Boolean. Boolean, let's say selected radio option. Okay, so let's take set and then get. Okay. Now, whatever is user is selected, the option that will be stored here. Now I'll take this option and in the main calculation, if my selected radio option equal to greater, if my selected radio option equal to greater, go ahead and execute the greater. If else, if selected radio option is smaller, then go ahead and execute the smaller method. Go ahead and execute the smaller method. In case user has not selected anything, then show the result equal to 0. Then show result equal to 0. Now, here is the thing. When I say greater, smaller, when I say greater, smaller, what is the value that is holding here? Is it holding the greater, smaller? What is the data type?
It's holding either it is true or false. It's checked or unchecked.
Checked or unchecked. So basically I have it two radio options are there. Okay. If I say, how can I say that whether it is a selected or not selected? Because there are two options. This is one option and this is another option. Both the option values should be stored into the selected radio option. One is unchecked, another one is checked. Now, how can we say that this is a Boolean?
So selected option equal to 1 in the declaration, can we give like that?
Equal to 1. When you say equal to 1, how you will capture the greater?
So we are calling, like we are giving in the if condition where selected radio option equal to greater, right? So that means when greater is selected, it takes that.
Okay. Now back to your question. When you say Boolean, is this a right way to declare the condition? What is the value it is giving? What is the error it is giving?
Madam, can you, instead of getter, you can use selected option, radio option equal to true or false.
Why I need a true and false? These are two options. See, again, these are two options. If they select, if user is selected the greater, then it should capture. Okay, let me go back to the Visualforce page. Okay, here is the Visualforce page. When I select the item label, backend my Visualforce page, in order to identify what is the user has selected, there are two options are there. If user select the first option, then Visualforce is going to store the value as a G. Okay, that means at the back end, it is going to tell me that, okay, they have selected the greater, means G. If they select smaller, then Visualforce is going to store it as a S. These are the two different options. These are the two different options.
So instead of Boolean, then we not put string, and then instead of greater, we should put G and S.
Is everybody agree that?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Because my Visualforce doesn't say that it is your option is one option. Okay, it says that there are two options that I have implemented inside the radio, and for each option, whenever the user is selecting it, I am taking a value as a string. I am taking the value as a string. So it should be a string. And here, what is the value that I'm going to get it? G is the one, capital G, I'm going to get it. And here, capital S. Now let's say. Perfect. Now our business logic is there. Okay, cool. So our business logic has implemented. This is all good. Now, whenever you are writing, this is just a hint. Whenever you are implementing any Apex class, couple of things are mandatory. @author, @date, @description. This is on top of the class. Who is the author? Give your name. Okay. When did you implement? Give the date 02/09/2022. Okay. Description. When I say description, what is the purpose of writing this class? Okay. Implemented business logic, implemented the class to identify greater number among three numbers, or identify smaller number among or out of three numbers. Out of three given numbers. So what will happen now? Anybody comes here. Okay, if starting at the, like whoever comes to the class, the first thing they will see is class name, right? Whenever they see the class name, two things are very important here. Whenever anybody see the class name, we should able to figure out by looking at the class name, what is this logic has implemented inside the class. That is one clue. And the second clue is by looking at the description. By looking at the description, if you have 100, right now we have implemented 63 lines. Okay, assume that there is a 200 lines. Will you do not have a time, ideally, for the production issues. For the production issues, if something is breaking up, they are not going to wait for more than 1 hour. So you have just 1 hour to fix the problem. Now, when you have a 1 hour, will you able to go through the 200 lines to understand what is this class is doing it? Somebody has written this class, now the person is not there. So now your responsibility to fix the issue. What is the, here you will get it here to look at this description. By looking at this description, okay, this is to identify the greater number and smaller number. Okay, now I understand this class is for greater and smaller. Is my issue is related to greater and smaller? If yes, then go to the specific smaller, or go to the specific greater. Or else, if it is not, my issue is not related to greater and smaller, then I'll not go here. So simply by looking at the description, I could able to understand. And the next thing is that it is a initialization date. Initialization date and modification date. These two also important. Means when somebody has returned the class, when did the person has written? 02/09/2022. and when is the last modified. Okay, if the person has written on the class, probably 01, 01. Okay, now we are modifying it today. 02, 09, 20, 22, and I'll say my initial SIT. And then I'll write what is the modification that I'm doing it. Made changes to the smaller method. Right? This kind of a data, or this is more important than we are writing the logic, because when you are able to write this, the description, when you are able to clear about the description, what to write it, you are perfect in the program, because we know what we have implemented. As long as you are clear what is the implemented and you are perfectly write the description clearly mentioning it everything, that means you are doing good in the program, right? Not only the class level, we have to write it into the method level also. On the method level, what are the things that we need to write? @ description, @ parameters, and @ return. So these three things are important. So do I have initial parameters in this main method? It is not there. So I'll say that none. Parameters are not there. What is the description of the method? Calculating the greater or smaller, or I'll say calling greater method, smaller method based on the condition. Based on the condition. What is the return value I'm going to get it? It will return the number. It will return the number because result is the integer. It will return the number. Now same thing we have to implement it for every individual method. Every individual method, saying that what is the description and what is the parameter, what is the return value. Here for the greater, calculating the greater, calculating the greater number, and here it is calculating the smaller number. Now this is how your code looks like in the real time. In the real time, when you open any class, okay, there are at least you will see 4 or 5 like this. Who is the author, who is the date, when is the date, and description, initialization date, modification. Like you will see, this is how exactly we write in the real time. Okay, now we are done with the Apex class. Now how can I enable connection between the Visualforce page and Apex class?
Using custom controller.
Using custom controller. Right. So we have a controller equal to, what is the class name? Class name is this. Let's save this. Now the connection is enabled. Now what are the things that I need to do? First thing, I need to store the num1 value. So what are the user is entering in the first number, right? In the input text, they are going to enter the value. So I'm going to store the value. How can I do that? How can I store?
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation num1.
Num1. Yeah.
Right. For the second number, we have a num2. value equal to curly braces, exclamation, num2. And the third one, we are going to store it into the num3, value equal to exclamation num3. Now we have all the values are set. Now next thing is that I need to set the value for the selected option, which is a selected radio option. Now here, radio option, I'll say value equal to selected radio option. Now result where I'm going to store it. Result will be here, output text, value equal to result. Done. Done. So now next thing, what I need, how can I call this main calculation method? When should I call this main calculation?
In the calculate button.
On the calculate button. When I say calculate button, on the button we have something called action. Action equal to curly braces and then method name. Right, so right now we have everywhere we have given class is connected, num1, num2, num3 is storing it. I'm storing the radio option and then calculating the what are the given number is there, and I'm showing the result. Now let's go back to the Visualforce page. Now let's say 77, 555 and 111. I'll say smaller. Calculate. Is it showing 77 is showing it? Then if I say greater, if I say click on greater, then it is going to show 555. Now this is clear. That's what we have written the logic in the Apex class. That's what we have written the Apex class, right?
Yeah.
Just a second. Okay, so that's what we have written. Now how the logic is getting executed. As soon as I enter the first number, as soon as I enter the first number, it will go and sit into the num1. If I enter the second number, it will go and sit into the num2. And if I enter the third number, third number sit into the num3. Now what are we doing it? We are selecting the radio option. The radio option is whatever we have selected, it sits into the selected radio option. Now I'm clicking on calculate. As soon as I click on the calculate, the method is called. What is this method is doing it? This method is going to check what is the selected radio option. Is my radio option is G or S? Here it is selected as G. If it is selected as G, then it will go to the method called greater. In the greater, I'm going to calculate, we have written a logic to identify the highest number. So we are doing some else if conditions here. And based on that, we have a highest number num2. So it is displaying it is storing the num2 into the result. And then as soon as it's set into the result, it will come back to the Visualforce page and it displays the result here.
Swapna, in this we are also doing the wrapper class, am I right? The concept of wrapper class, because the first class you wrote is calling the two methods down, am I right? The greater and the smaller.
Sorry?
Do we also use, are we also
Wrapper, we
using,
use it.
yes, in this one, are
Wrapper,
we
we use it. Okay, so we use the wrapper. Wrapper discussion will come later. I think.
But I was saying because you are using it here, you see that, are you not using it here, the wrapper class also?
Where are you seeing the wrapper class?
Oh, can you go? Okay, I thought initially we were using this. Can you go down, please? No, we are not in this. This is standard.
Wrapper, when we use it, it has to be class inside the class.
Mm-hmm.
In case if you are going to declare a wrapper, it has to be declared with the public class. Then I have to say here public class wrapper kind of a thing I have to implement it. So that
I
is
got confused. Sorry.
yeah. So this is not the wrapper here.
And one last thing, can we not put any value in the last, in the all these three input parameters, and then make it select, and it should 0, am I right? Because that's what we did.
Let's see. So by default, it is taking a 0. What is the reason for taking a 0 is we have taken here integer. Now, if I give a -1, what will happen? Let's see. And that's what is going to happen. It is going to show the lesser one. Okay. Before you question anything, what will happen if I say here -344 and minus. Before you say this, please practice it. This is my assignment to you. Okay. So this is what we are happening. This is what it is executing it. Now let's see, we have another classes. Let me open any other classes. Let's take this calculation. Now, can I call along with the greater sum 3 numbers? If I wanted to call this, is it possible? What it is saying?
Only one class can be called at a time.
The name can only contains underscore and alphabetic characters. It must begin with the letter and be unique, must not include whatever the errors are there. It is throwing here all the errors because it is thinking that this entire thing is a class name. It is not thinking that I'm giving the 2 classes names here. This everything is thinking as the entire starts with the C to till N. It is thinking as entirely it is a class name. That's the reason it has to be underscore alphabet, to not start with the comma, and everything it is giving the error. So in case if you have a multiple, that's how the extension controller comes into play the picture. Okay, so that we will discuss tomorrow. Today, are you clear how to call a Apex class, how to implement a Apex class when we go for the real time? How do we write in the real time Apex classes?
Yep.
This is simple, straightforward, but only thing is that we have to maintain the coding standards. We have to maintain the text or comments. We have to maintain it. Right? Now, coming to the assignment. Implement a Visualforce page. Implement Visualforce page. To multiply the given two numbers and subtract with third given number. Implement it. This is the second one. Implement a Visualforce page for calculation box. You all know calculation box, right? Your calculation box is here. You will have a result, and below you have all the numbers. And these numbers are 1, 2, 3, up to 9. Up to 9 it is there. And below you will have plus, minus, multiply, equal to. Plus, minus, multiply, division, and one more thing is equal to. When you say equal to, like 4, here it's a condition. Okay, condition, if you say 4 plus 1, then the result should come here 5. Okay, so this is the calculation. So implement a Visualforce page for the calculation box, and based on the selected value and selected condition, the result has to be displayed. Third one, implement a Visualforce page. Implement a Visualforce page Visualforce page to calculate sum of given 10-digit phone number. So what is this means? If you have a, if you are like, there should be a one input text, which is a phone number, right? So in this input text, if user entered the phone number, let's assume that user entered 96624606161. Okay, the result has to be 9 plus 6 plus 6. How much? 9, 10, 16, 22, whatever the number is there. Let me calculate it. So it has to be 9 plus 6 plus 6 plus 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 0 plus 1 plus 6 plus 1. So 46. So the result has to be 46. Do you all know how to calculate the age based on the date of birth? Basically, you need to know how to calculate the date, how to calculate the year, how to calculate the month. These all you need to have. How to do this, all of things in the Apex. I think that's not good. Okay, let's go ahead with this 3. Then we'll see tomorrow. Okay, so these are the 3 assignments. So when you do the assignment, make sure you are adding all the comments to the Apex class. Class level comment, method level comment. And if you think any variable or anywhere if you need it, just add the comment that will give the clarity. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then let's move on to the admin class.